Well, being that it's 9 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There it is.
All right, we got a big agenda today. Everybody's had a chance to look at it, review it. I think the changes are been put in there,
They have, but this isn't a change, but just we're
an
gonna
addition, whatever.
No, we're gonna discuss number 10 after number 4. Because Anne's gonna be a part of that discussion and then she doesn't need to be here at the time.
Okay. So 10 will move up to 5 and
We're not
then
gonna change the numbers, but we're gonna discuss 10.
after 4. No, number 12 was added, so that's in there from what Carol's email was saying. All right,
Number 14, the levy, but yes, it's on the website and was added yesterday.
and we'll do the closed session at the end of the meeting.
Yep. But do we do that before 15? I would think.
Yep. All right. If there's no other additions or corrections, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
With those clarifications, I move to approve.
Is there a second?
So,
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we go to approving previous board minutes from December 3rd board meeting.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And now the board minute meetings from the special meeting from December 11th. Any additions or corrections to that? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Motion was made. Is there a second? Dewey seconded. Any further discussion? Not. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, next up is public comment. Anybody have any public comment? This is the time to come before the board. Comment on anything you want, or if something on the agenda, feel free to do so. Looks like there's no public comment. We can move on to appointments with Brian on the stormwater pollution prevention plan.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So Houston County has a MS4 permit, which is a municipal separate storm sewer system permit. We are one of 11 counties in the state. There is a total of roughly 250 permitted entities in the state that have an MS4 permit. So we're one of only 11 counties. So as part of that permit requirement, we are required to hold an annual meeting where the public has an opportunity to provide input on our stormwater pollution prevention program in the La Crescent area. So, or in the MS4 area, which in this case encompasses La Crescent, city of La Crescent vicinity. So We are considered a non-traditional permittee, being that our regulatory authority within the Little Crescent area is limited to our roadways. So even though our MS4 area covers the entirety of the Little Crescent area, really our regulatory authorities within the roadway area, of which we also have ownership of that. So for 2024, there has been no projects that took place within those roadway sections. I worked jointly with county zoning on any type of enforcement issues. There wasn't any enforcement actions taken this year. There is no reported illicit discharges. No one's been dumping chemicals into our system that we've been informed of or that we've been made aware of. So for this year is like most years, there's been no actions taken on that. And for winter snow and ice removal, we have tried to limit our salt application to the roadways within La Crescent. So in the beginning of winter, end of winter, when the temperatures are a little bit warmer, we try to use pure salt on the roadways, and mechanical moves means to remove the snow by plowing. And as you get into the heart of winter, we need to use more sand. So we use the sand salt mix in the winter. So City of La Crescent uses straight salt and they use some brine. So we've been trying to go more to how they'd like to see the roadways maintained within the municipality. But we're not gonna load up a truck, plow just within La Crescent area, go back, empty the salt out of the truck, put in a salt sand mix, and then go do the rest of the route. So we do it most efficient while trying to also limit our sand application within La Crescent area. Part of that is because Pine Creek is an impaired waterway for both E. coli bacteria and sediment. So we're not allowed to increase our sediment use within the La Crescent area. We need to maintain or use less sand within that area is what we've historically used. So that is kind of a brief overview of what we've been doing on the roadway side. The permit also has some training requirements, so we need to train staff for illicit discharge detection. We need to train them for smart salting, so our operators know how much salt to apply to roadways. The smart salting training, I've had all highway staff go through that. All of our operators that plow within the Little Crescent area, and almost all of our operators, we have a couple operators that have yet to do it, have done the smart salting training for this year. Also had building maintenance do some salting for salting parking lots and sidewalks, so I had them do a couple short 10-minute videos on salting, so we have that aspect of the permit covered. For illicit discharge detection, I've had all highway staff, with the exception of our accountant office staff, have gone through illicit discharge detection. Part of the permit requirements are that the county has everyone that is in the field go through illicit discharge detection. It specifically calls out law enforcement, so I send stuff over to the county sheriff to say you should do some type of illicit discharge training, and I gave them a link to some training on that to send out to the officers. Highway staff, all of both our construction inspectors, engineering staff, and our maintenance staff has gone through illicit discharge training, because that's listed in here as public works employees. But then there's also the other county employees that could be considered field staff. So you have the county assessor's office, you have public health and human services, that those employees are in the field a lot. They have not gone through this training. And one of the things I wanted to ask the board is, this permit is put in place thinking from a municipal standpoint, where you have, think about like the City of La Crescent, you have your building permit staff out there, you have your law enforcement, you have the maintenance staff. It's kind of set up where those employees that are in the field, they would go through this training each year. Counties are a little bit different, that we're a non-traditional permittee. We have a lot more staff than a small city does, and we have different type of employees than a typical city does. We have the social workers and the public health employees that are out there in the fields. Do we want them to go through some type of training annually? So ultimately, if we had all those employees do it, we might get up to 75% of the county workforce go through illicit discharge training because of our MS4 permit, which only applies to a couple miles of roadway within La Crescent area. So, in if you read the permit requirements, word for word, and I can read it to you, it says all field staff. So we maybe should have them, but doesn't make sense. Does the county want to do that every year for all of those employees, or how do we want to proceed on that? And if you want me to read it to you, I can read what
You gotta do it every year?
every year. It needs to be done at least once each calendar year. The permittee must train all field staff in illicit discharge recognition.
And that's just La Crescent.
This is this permit requirement is there just because of our MS4 area, which is limited to La Crescent.
Because of Pine Creek, Windlack area, whatever.
Yeah, it's because La Crescent's part of the La Crescent MPO area, the metropolitan area, which is, why we have this. Winona County is not a MS4 permittee, neither is Fillmore County. So, you think about some of these counties that have bigger metropolitan areas that are not MS4 permittee, it's because they're not, Winona itself is not big enough to become a MS4 area. La Crescent is because it's tied to La Crosse.
How much is the schooling or training?
What was that?
How much is the schooling or the training?
The training cost, we determine our own training, so we can go out there, we can find some YouTube videos and have everyone watch a quick video. There is no specific requirement on it needs to be so many hours or any time requirement. So we can go out there and we can find a 10-minute video to have them watch, something that's more condensed for certain departments and something that's more in depth for other departments. There really is no requirement other than they need to go through some type of training for illicit discharge detection and recognition and reporting discharge, so that way they know who to report to. So just need to show them how to detect it. So if there's paint right by an inlet, or discoloration by inlet, that there's something going on there, and then need to train them on who to report to. Report that notice to myself or county zoning to Amelia. So it's not time consuming, it's just something we need to do, and then we also need to document who has done that training, when, what it was, so we need to keep that record of the training.
When did that training part come about? Because I remember filling this form out 10 years ago, just for the township, but is this something new now where they're including everybody?
This is new on the 2020 permit, of which, just because it's a 2020 through 2025 permit. But when the permit actually didn't get, it didn't come out at the beginning of 2020, and then there's some, you have some time to ramp up your program to comply with everything, so you had a year on that. And then now, the MPCA is really kind of coming out there and saying, these are the key focus areas that should be focusing on the permit, and this training is one of their focus areas. There has been no reporting yet done on the 2020 permit. Permit goes through 2025, but this will be a focus area for them at some point.
Well, I can see, your staff at the county highway department, zoning,
Perhaps.
I don't know if John and his staff would if they need another training session to look at or not, I don't know. Would it be beneficial for you guys?
With some of the public health, foundational public health
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, I haven't talked to John or any of the other, you know, I haven't talked to the county assessor yet. I kind of wanted to get the board's input on, you know, how far do we want to extend it? You know, the county assessor's office, you know, they're out in the field looking at all these, land values and stuff. So they're in the field throughout the county, including the Crescent area as well. So it's like, you know, where do you draw that line? So at this point, I've talked to the department heads that are specifically called out on the training. We haven't talked to the other staff other department head field staff.
well, in that La Crescent area where it pertains to, there was a recent study done for runoff for salt.
Yes.
What were the results of that?
There's no concern right now within La Crescent. I mean, they're gonna continue to monitor the chlorides in the water, but the chlorides are becoming an issue in areas that have lakes. So streams and rivers, the chloride gets into the water and it gets flushed out of the system so fast that the actual concentration in the water is way below the threshold for
You
concern.
read more about the concern for that, but like in La Crescent area, I think you guys have been doing a good job of monitoring your output on the salt and keeping it out of the water systems, but I don't know, what do you guys think, if you want all staff to do this training, or should we
Makes
leave it
no-
up to
makes no
Brian?
sense.
Huh?
Makes no sense to have all staff do it.
Doesn't to me either, but
I would think the highway department, by all means, the assessor, because he's out there, maybe,
so the assessor, what would be the benefit for the assessor's office to do it? I know they go out in the field and do assessments, but
that's about it.
what do
Well,
they
just
get?
because they're in their field here. So the permit says field staff includes but is not limited to police, fire department, public works, and park staff. So those are the staff that is specifically called out in the permit by department or by the staffing type. But it says includes but is not limited to. And it's for, it calls out field staff. So.
I think the highway department would be
I
planning.
think we're covered with the first part.
Yep.
Unless somebody wants to take it, if John's department would like to take it, I don't care about that. I mean, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay, I can pass it on to John and to Luke at the assessor's office and let them look and see if they think it's valuable for their staff and,
Okay,
Then you gotta train the staff as to, here's the area that you should be watching, the rest of it doesn't matter.
well, I mean, if they notice an illicit discharge in a different city, different community, even in the rural areas, doesn't mean it doesn't matter. We don't necessarily document and we don't report it back the same way when we report our MS4 numbers, but we still want to address the issue if something is observed.
more eyes out there, the better. So do you need action on this?
So I don't think we need action on that. I think just
Just a public information?
yeah.
meeting?
And then we would like to, provide the public an opportunity to comment if anyone that's here wants to comment on how we're doing or anything they would like to see us do differently.
Anybody in the public would like to comment on this? Seeing none, I guess we're covered.
Okay.
All right,
Thanks, Brian.
thanks, Brian. All right, it's 9:19. We'll move on to employee recognition awards. We got quite a few employees to recognize here. As I call your name, could you come forward? We kind of have to stay here for our audio and video here, but as I call your name, come forward and get your certificate. We'll start out with the 10-year award. Goes to Jordan Gaden for 10 years. Is Jordan here? Okay. Another 10-year goes to Alexander Bird. Thank you.
Thanks.
Congrats, Al.
Thanks, Alan.
The next 10-year award goes to Melissa Jordan. Melissa? Okay. The other 10-year award goes to Jennifer Daly Oaks.
I guess I should just stand up.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yep.
Congrats. Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, we're moving on for the 20-year service award, and that goes to Jonathan Koulis. My local deputy. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
The next 20-year goes to Lori Feldmeyer. Is Lori here this morning? Moving on to the 25-year, we're going to have Mark Olson. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Mark.
Now we're moving on to our 35-year service award. Goes to Thomas Peter. Thomas here?
See, Tom.
The next 35-year service award goes to Tammy Moss.
She's here.
Tammy mentioned to me that there was a 5-year stint where she was off for a while, otherwise she'd have been here 40, so.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next 35 years goes to Lisa Yant. Okay, we're moving on to 40 years. Carol Lapham.
40 years is a long time.
Or if she was 10 or something.
Congratulations. Congrats. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
Congrats, kid.
45 years goes to Cindy Agadal. We thank Cindy for her 45 years. And then Carol O'Hearn for 45 years.
Carrie.
Or Carrie, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Congrats. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Carrie.
Congrats. Thank you much.
All right, that's it. I want to thank all you guys, all the dedicated employees to Houston County. We really appreciate you guys, so.
We're gonna get a photo
We've
then.
taken pictures.
Yep, that'd be good.
So everybody that got a certificate.
Everybody that got their awards, you can come up front.
You all stand in front and we'll stand in the back.
No, you gotta be out front, Carol.
Okay, let's see. Bob, I can't see.
Get a little closer.
That's okay.
Maybe if we should put AJ on, since you're taller, maybe on one of the sides. That's great. Can you see everybody? Why don't you do yours and then
I can see everybody, I think. I'm gonna get really close.
We have to
Yeah, if you wanna hold it. I'm having trouble seeing over here. I can't see you, Eric. I'm missing some of you. in the back row.
If you miss the commissioners, it's not.
That's
us.
okay.
Don't worry about us, get the ones with the awards.
If you just over just a little bit, Eric.
This way?
Yep, that's
All right.
good.
Oh, okay. Give me some room here.
Perfect. Okay, don't move.
Can you breathe now?
All right. So AJ, just take a little step towards Jen. There we go. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, guys.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Time to put up with us.
Okay.
All right, moving on to consent agenda. We have one item, and that is the hire of Morgan Soley as the full-time probationary social worker.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. On to action items. First item is consider approving the U of M MOA. Lisa Dirks is here to go through it with us.
Good morning, Houston County Commissioners and staff. Lisa Dirks, Regional Director with the Extension. So in your packet is a copy of the 2025 through 27 Memorandum of Agreement. I was here in June and we went through it in detail as far as any changes and all that, so I'm not gonna go through that all again. But we're at the point where we need to make a decision about the staffing level for the Extension Office. And so within the contract that I sent you, there's 2 pages, I believe they're pages 6 and 7, that show our current staffing level, which is a full-time 4-H educator and a half-time agriculture educator. And then there was a request for a second option, which is a 3/4 time 4-H educator and a half-time agriculture educator in there. So do you want me to continue with details or would you like to ask questions?
Well, as of now, the full-time educator and half-time extension educator is in the budget. So I just wanted the commissioners to realize that. The other option was to try to cut back on the cost of the MOA to just 3/4 time educator for the youth development. So we have to make a decision. Do we want to keep it the way it is in the budget, or do you want to change it? From what I understand from Carol, that right now, as of now, we're at 0 with our current levy being at 7.5. Yep. Is that correct, Bob?
That is correct. So do we need a motion or there's just this discussion?
Do we need a motion to approve the MOA as it was first presented or with the second option? So
I'll make a motion to go with the first option.
keep it the way it is?
Yep.
All right,
Second.
second to that. Any further discussion?
Just a question. By approving this MOA, we're approving 25, 26, and 27, and the increases that go with it.
Correct.
I understand.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you to the board for signing the MOA. We'll work on the paperwork side of things, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 2, consider reappointing Joshua Grand to the Planning Commission for another 3-year term beginning January of 2025 and ending December 31st, 2027.
I've been to some of the meetings that he's been involved with. He's done a good job, so I'll make a motion to approve him for a reappointment.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Didn't say nothing, did you, Ann?
I didn't have to say anything. I do want to point out, though, just for clarification, this isn't one of the two that we're currently searching for. This is
This is
a
a-
reappointment.
Yep, just a re-up. So we're still searching for 2 open spots, correct?
Correct.
Which has been advertised.
Yes. Yep.
From, which districts are they from?
The ones that are getting off?
No, the ones, the ones that we're looking to replace. Is it District 5 and District 2?
We need from Hoka and La Crescent.
Although, from what I understand, Amelia,
In her, if you guys saw her last email, she talks about how we need to would like to get more people from out in your district, Greg, Spring Grove area, if we could.
Okay.
We're kind of heavy on the, like in my district, the Crescent, we're okay probably.
Yeah,
Cindy's getting off.
the southern part of the county
Yep.
could use more representation, according to Amelia. So, yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. If we don't get somebody, we're gonna have to take what we get, but
It'd be nice, though.
it would be nice, yep.
I'll ask around in my district, see if we can get somebody to come up.
All right.
Yeah, I have it, I had asked that applications be submitted by this coming Friday, but, we can extend that if need be.
But
Yeah,
this
we might
Friday,
need to do that.
If you don't have any, you almost have to.
Are you talking about the internal first
No.
or the external? Because the 3 and 4.
No, we're not there yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now we'll go on, if we're done with that one. We voted, didn't we?
Yep.
I
Did
think
we all
did.
do the aye?
Okay, we probably didn't vote. We better,
in a second, but
okay. We got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed, same sign. All right, now we're good. Number 3, consider approving the continuation of competitive internal search for a position of survey crew chief, B31. Ann,
I was asked to add this to the action items. I don't know if there was any discussion.
are both here.
Did you want to come forward,
Brian, you want to come up?
Eric, you wanna come up too?
So this is for due to the retirement or resignation of somebody we just recognized today.
Yes, yep, so our highway survey crew chief, Tom Peter, has recently retired. He put in his resignation that was approved by the board, or accepted by the board here about a month and a half ago. So we've had a lot of discussion between myself, Tess Kruger when she was here as the human resource director, and Eric Schmidt as far as backfilling this position and stuff, trying to figure out how we can make things more efficient on, are we looking to fill someone with the exact same duties as what Tom Peter had, or were we looking at potentially modifying some stuff? And ultimately, what we all determined is that we would like to fill Tom Peter's position, or the survey crew chief's position, exactly as it has previously been. So what we'd like to do at this time is initiate internal search first, see if we have any internal applicants, and then if we don't have any internal applicants, then look to have someone coming in from outside, an external search. So if we have an internal search, internal applicant, then we'll, try to get this position filled. We do need to have someone in charge of survey at the highway department, and then we'll deal with the vacancy if someone moves internally as far as backfilling that position. We haven't talked about backfilling that if it ultimately happens, so.
Just to point out, the 49ers contract is worded a little bit differently than the other ones, where it specifically states that open positions can be filled, or priority is given to internal candidates. The one with the most seniority basically has first dibs, and then others before we'd go out to an external search, which is different than we do it with the other contracts.
Is that like a week of internal search before you open it up to external?
Right, so if this is approved, then when I go back to the office, then I'll send out an internal posting, which will be active for 5 business days. So within those 5 days, then they would have to get their applications in.
And if, go ahead, Bob.
Then you review, I mean, you know, the people that are internal anyways, but you review that and present whether or not you approve of the internal.
Yep, so historically I've reviewed and then I've, you know, talked to HR at this point. I'll, you know, talk to, you know, Ann and Carol as far as deciding how we want to proceed. And then we would make a recommendation, you know, to the board as far as the hire, or I guess if we, you know, don't receive any applicants, then it goes straight to the external search, but.
So my question, I guess, is if we've got this item that we're gonna authorize the internal search, if we don't have one, there's an external search, but are we jumping the gun by approving the external search?
Historically, they've been approved at the same time. We just,
Only 5 business days.
Right,
So
but
that way we can just keep moving with it if there aren't any internal applicants.
otherwise we have to wait and come back in 2 weeks at the quickest for the next board meeting.
But the only thing that externally, according to this, the only thing we can do externally is
If no one internally
if
takes it.
nobody the survey crew chief, we aren't gonna advertise to replace. If somebody internally goes to the survey crew chief,
Yeah, we're not asking for that because we don't know, first off, if anyone's gonna apply and who it's gonna be, and then what position would be opened up. You know, if it is, we have some ideas of who would maybe apply. But we're not asking for that to be backfilled. I would like to have some more conversation as far as how we go about doing that.
so the external search is a kind of a moot point until the internal search is done.
Correct.
But you like to have it approved in case, you know, because we got 2 weeks till the next meeting and keep the ball rolling is kind of what
Right.
you're saying. So, okay.
And this search really isn't gonna have anything to do with your survey department then.
Nope. The only involvement then, so the county surveyor's office is gonna assist highway with their survey duties over the next couple months, or, you know, however long it takes to get this position filled. So, so we've been kind of bringing Eric up to speed as far as setting up the books for our staking, what the construction staking is for the bridges and the slope staking and different stuff. So he's been involved to get updated on kind of our process, because there's differences between staking in the field for boundary surveys, for monumentation versus staking for construction staking. So that's been the involvement, is trying to figure out how they can help and assist as needed until we get everyone back up to speed, so.
So if you hire it internally, they won't have anything to do with it.
I think that they will still be involved until we get, you know, when we go out there to stake, you know, internal candidates still gonna need to learn some stuff to get up to speed of what the position fully entails. So we'll need to have Eric's assistance on that. And then we also have 2 people out there staking a lot of times, because you're gonna have, you know, the main person involved along with the assistant out there to hold the lap, pound hubs, do other work. So there's gonna be some help until we're, you know, fully at staff.
Okay.
So right now, how many staff is in the survey?
So we have one person that is pretty much full-time survey and drafting up survey stuff at Highway. He does all the books. He's always involved with everything we do with surveying. We have a second person that helps with doing the staking stuff. He hasn't been very involved in the past with the books. We've tried to getting more up to speed the last few years. And then that person also does stuff with helping out with inspection and testing materials, running samples back and forth to the testing labs if we don't do the testing in-house. So we have kind of that one full-time plus part-time survey person.
All that is excluding Thomas's?
That is including.
You're including
his.
Thomas in that?
Yep, so by taking him out, that went from, 1.5 survey down to, half-time at this point, essentially.
Do they work a year ahead on projects?
So as soon as the project goes in the 5-year plan, they're usually out there that first year. So they'll do the survey work 5 years in advance of construction. During the winter after that, they'll be out. They usually start drawing it up in AutoCAD. We can start on the design. They're involved with helping us with property lines and in the surveyor's office and that type of stuff. Once everything's approved on the design, they need to get the book set up for staking. So you can't finalize your books for staking until the plans are fully designed and approved. So during the winter months before the construction season, that's when they're finalizing the books, make sure everything's ready to be staked. So that way, as soon as the summer comes around, the contractors start working, they can get out there and get everything staked for the contractors. So they're really involved for 5 years on and off for any project.
Way in advance, yeah.
It's important that we keep on task to keep our projects going throughout the next few years, so I move to approve the item number 3. To do the initial internal. Do we have to keep them separate?
Yep.
Yeah. So far, internal.
Second.
Motion's been made second. Any further discussion?
To note that it was discussed with the Personnel Committee and Eric and
Okay. Under the recommendation of the Personnel Committee?
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Number 4, consider approving the initiation of a competitive external search for the position of survey crew chief. In the event of no internal applications are received during the 5-day internal posting period.
So move.
Second.
Okay.
Again, we had
was
this
quick.
discussion, and later on, when we do get a chief in place, I'm sure it'll be coming back to find a assistant, correct? And that'll be at a different time and a different pay and all that kind of stuff, so that's the way I understand it.
Correct, yeah, that'll be a totally separate.
Separate issue later on. This is get the chief.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to action item number 5, discuss the potential action for, oh, I'm sorry, we're doing 10 first? Okay. Discuss and possible action regarding county administrator job description position.
Okay, so you received the job description. There had been a different one approved for the interim county administrator, but it would, as I said, be my recommendation that the job description that was used when we had the county administrator before be adopted as the job description, whether it's an internal or interim or an outside hire position. So that's kind of the first step, and then we're coming up on December 31st for the interim appointment, so the board needs to decide whether they're going to have a motion to extend the interim position or a motion to advertise to hire. So that's the 2 items that you need to address.
So first, we just need a motion to approve the job description of administrator that was presented to us.
Looks complete and has the information that's needed to go forward. I so move.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Now on to, where we're at as far as, interim, Carol's been our interim administrator. I, for one, would like to see a motion to extend her interim position as administrator for next year.
We wanna go a full year, or do we wanna go 3 months at a time, 6 months at a time?
No, 3 months is not, that ain't enough time.
To get
We
the,
could do 6 months or a year. I just as soon do a year. It's something that can always change midstream.
Well, it could be for a year or until such time as an administrator is hired.
Could do it that way as well.
That's my motion. I'll move to continue Carol as the interim administrator or until such time as a new administrator is hired.
Okay,
That interim being for a year.
Up to a year.
up to.
is there a comment on that?
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking, yeah, I don't know if what you're getting at then is you want us to start a recruitment
No,
for?
no.
Okay. Okay.
I think that's up to
We're
the
just
new
appointing
board.
Carol as interim administrator.
And 3 months from now, they could decide that they want to have a
Okay.
Right.
search.
For right now, it's not in the budget, so we gotta be careful about it.
So is there a second to Bob's motion?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Any further discussion on that? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Congratulations, Carol.
Maybe.
If you had something to throw, you'd be hit.
Well, it's an interim.
Thank you.
Keep things going. Wanna jump into something?
You've been doing a good job, so.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
All right, now we can do number 5, correct?
Yep.
Discuss the potential action for Minnesota DOT limited use permit regarding Snowville Trail nighttime two-way use. Consider adopting resolution number 2441. Holly and Brian, I understand we have some people from DNR online.
We do. There have been some ongoing questions regarding the LUP, so we thought it would be a great idea to have the DNR folks here to not only help explain, but answer questions as well.
Okay.
So we've got Sue Danielson and Wade Miller. Brian has done an excellent job here digging in to find a bunch of details too, so not sure who wants to start.
You know who that
Brian?
608 number is? That's not the MnDOT, is it?
That's one of our club members,
Okay, thank you.
one of Houston County Club GIA, and Travis Vicker is also here from our Rochester office as well.
Okay,
All right,
so Brian, would you?
you wanna get into this,
No, but I
Brian?
will.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so number 5 and 6 kind of go hand in hand. So the DNR, they have a grant and aid program, which is the number 6 on the agenda. And that grant and aid program, provides just over $101,000 worth of aid to the 4 clubs in Houston County. Part of the requirement for that grant and aid is that snowmobile trails are going across land that have permission from the landowners to go across that land. Well, some of these trails go within MnDOT right away. MnDOT is saying in order to have your snowmobile trails within, or the club snowmobile trails within MnDOT right away, we need to have a MnDOT limited use permit, which gives permission for the trails to be within the right of way. So I did a quick mapping of how many miles of trails are within MnDOT right of way in the county. Multiply that by $264 per mile, which is the DNR grant and aid contract amount, or the grant amount to the clubs, and it amounts to about $7,000 that would be going to the clubs for trails located within MnDOT Trunk Highway. I've had a lot of conversation with the DNR, so Sue and Wade were involved with some conversations that that Polly and I had. And then I've also spoken with MnDOT district engineer and reached out to other MnDOT staff without much success on other ones. So trying to determine, and also spoke with Houston County Attorney and other county engineers on this MnDOT limited use permit. So I'm trying to figure out, this limited use permit. Ultimately, it's a Houston County's limited use permit, so Houston County will be the permittee for through MnDOT. So that passes some different requirements from MnDOT as far as the county or the trails being maintained or damage on that MnDOT right of way. And also liability gets shifted from MnDOT to the county. Spoken with the DNR some on their take on the liability side of things, and also spoke with our attorney Sam Yount on that. So Sam was not able to be here today, but his recommendation is that Houston County Board does not approve MnDOT LUP due to his concerns on liability being shifted from MnDOT to the county. Was speaking with the other county engineers in southeast Minnesota. It sounds like Fillmore County had a MnDOT LUP submitted to them, and I've been told that went to their highway subcommittee, and they are not going to be pursuing approving that permit. Goodhue County's attorney's office is advising to not approve the MnDOT LUP up in Goodhue County either. I don't know how they're gonna proceed with that. There's been no action taken on that yet, but that has been the recommendation provided from Goodhue County attorney's office to their engineer. The other counties in southeast Minnesota, I don't know of any of them that have received a MnDOT LUP requesting approval at this time. So either they have ones previously in place, or MnDOT's not pursuing them at this time for some reason with those counties. So Freeborn and Fillmore County, I do know that, or Freeborn and Mauer County, it sounds like the county does not have MnDOT LUPs for those snowmobile trails. Those counties both have a city that are sponsoring those trails or that approve the LUPs. So they found a way to get those approved without going through the county.
So the cities approved that?
There was 2 cities in those counties. Now, I don't have a map of where those trails are. I don't know if those trails are located just within those 2 cities, and the rest of the trails in those counties are all outside of MnDOT right away. But I do know that those counties are saying that they do not have a county LUP, that it's 2 cities that are sponsoring those trails. And they don't know the full background of that other than the cities have the LUPs in place with MnDOT. So at this time, like I said, this conversation with the DNR is, if the county board does not approve the LUP, they're not eligible for submitting to get reimbursement for these trails within that right of way. So that's $7,000. The remainder of the $101,000 and change, the clubs would still be eligible for reimbursement no matter what happens with the LUP, because those are outside MnDOT right away. They have approval from the landowners to have those trails there. So this first part is, how do we want to proceed with the limited use permit? And I don't know if Wade or Sue wants to speak on what you guys are aware of within Minnesota statutes on limiting the liability to counties. I know that Wade mentioned that there's been other lawsuits that have taken place previously that the lawsuits get tossed out right away due to some protections that are exist already within statute. Would one of you two want to speak on that?
Sure. Good morning, Houston County Board of Commissioners. My name is Wade Miller. I am the State Trails and Snowmobile Program Consultant for the DNR Division of Parks and Trails. This is pretty new information that a governmental sponsor hasn't accepted an LUP from MnDOT. And just to clarify that all portions of trail must have permission, and even across the private lands, the clubs are required to have the permissions in the name of the sponsor. And so earlier, as mentioned, the cities that are the fiscal agent or sponsor to these grants have accepted these limited use permits from MnDOT. And just so you understand that the permission or the LUP that MnDOT is granting the sponsor, the grant sponsor, is basically formally acknowledging permission to have a public trail in that right of way. So all of the trails should have a permission and they should be in the name of the sponsor. It's not that you are on the hook for liability per se. It's to acknowledge that when permission is obtained from for a public trail from a underlying landowner, whether it's private or public, they are waiving their liability. So by you, Houston County, accepting the LUP, you are waiving liability, just as MnDOT is waiving liability because they're acknowledging formally that permission is granted to operate and maintain a public trail. And so there's, from the DNR's perspective, as per the program requirements, all portions of trail, whether it crosses public or private property, must have permission, and the permission should be in the name of the sponsor, unless the sponsor has some sort of contract or an agreement with the club that allows them to obtain those permissions in the name of the club. And I'll stop there in case you folks have any questions, but this is very normal. I've worked over 20 years in the field in northern Minnesota in 14 counties, and every county and sponsor has obtained a limited use permit from MnDOT when a snowmobile trail is in their right of way, as well as when there's a snowmobile trail in a county right of way, city right of way, or township right of way. Those clubs must obtain that permission as well. The permission can be written or oral, but it must be documented. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to assist.
Wayne,
Thank you.
I have a few,
Well, can I just so an oral permission is sufficient?
As long as it's documented, it meets our program
So
requirements.
if they have a chain of emails with communicating with like a local snowmobile club with the Minnesota DOT, permission to agreement, that's sufficient.
Correct.
Because I just had a conversation with a local club member that said that they have those chain of emails saying everything's good, we agree to this, but Minnesota DOT wouldn't sign it now, but they had an oral agreement that they would. So
Now, MnDOT might have their own processes, but for program requirements, for funding purposes, the program requires there must be approval for a trail. It must be documented.
okay,
We don't require or request those until there's a fiscal review. And a fiscal review is basically a snapshot in time, and then we randomly select locations during that fiscal review to have the club and or sponsor pull those landowner permissions to make sure that in a spot check, we have in good faith examined the permissions that are in place. They just need to be documented. To reinforce what you are asking, verbal permission, as long as it's documented, suffices our program needs.
all right, sorry, Bob, go ahead.
the limited use permit to which was supplied in our packet here, which is quite lengthy. Is that the same one that the clubs are using when they meet with the private landowners, that they're able to get a sample permit from you folks?
No, the limited use permit is MnDOT's formal way of acknowledging permission or granting permission. I would imagine that you probably, Houston County, has probably obtained limited use permits from MnDOT to do some sort of project or road work within your county. This permission is very specific to MnDOT. A limited use permit is a very specific document from MnDOT to authorize use in their right of way. It is not the same document. The document we have is sample. Clubs can choose to use our sample document. They can draft their own document, or they can get a piece of paper, a napkin, and they can write down, as long as it can be reasonably understood, the location of where the trail is located and the landowner has granted permission. It needs to be dated, signed, and the general understanding of what the permission has been granted. At that point, they have granted permission for a public trail, and their statutes to protect landowners. They waive their liability to have a public trail.
Right, and I'm familiar with the sample, and I've been involved in a local club since the early 90s.
Thank you.
I guess, so when we look at the verbiage that's in the contract that we're getting from the DOT, it's quite lengthy and downright confusing on where the liability stands in the state road right away versus the same document that these clubs are utilizing for their landowners, which they're able to show that the liability gets passed off, so the landowners is not. Why isn't this more simplified to make this process easier?
Is that more of a DOT question?
Absolutely, that's a 100% DOT question. I wasn't sure if there was
Well,
someone from DOT in the room.
We're hoping to get some answers there. Okay, and then again, it's in the state road right away, which, you know, you're a state agency through the DNR, not the county road right away, but yet we as the county board are supposed to approve this in a state road right away versus a county road right away?
Yeah, that's what's confusing to me is that we're
No.
being held, go ahead, Wade.
No, I don't think you are approving anything in MnDOT right of way. What you are doing by signing a limited use permit is you are accepting that permission. Meaning, I'll use some examples. When you buy a house, a seller signs it, a buyer signs it. When you buy a vehicle, the seller signs the title, the purchaser signs the title. It's a closing of a transaction. And I think the limited use permit concerns that you folks have are hung up on that liability component. And there are statutes that have been in place for probably 50 years. We wouldn't have a 26,000 mile snowmobile trail system in the state of Minnesota if landowners had concerns or were subject to lawsuits by granting permission for a public trail across their property. And trust me, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of lawsuits regarding snowmobile lawsuits on private and public lands and road right of ways. And usually the attorneys, what they do is they look in to make sure that all of the program requirements for grant and aid have been met, which suffices many of those statutes. And I'll give you another example. So we have a recreation statute, which basically says that any system as part of the Minnesota's recreation system, which would include wildlife management areas, state forest, public water accesses, snowmobile trails, ATV trails, as long as they're a public trail, users are assuming risk. And so unless there's negligence on a party, typically that is thrown out of court in any lawsuit because of the indemnification or the statutes that protect public recreational trails and users assuming risk when they use any of those facilities.
But if a lawyer can prove negligence, that's where we would be held liable because we've waived our rights here. I mean, that's why our county attorneys are saying, don't sign this because we're assuming full responsibility. And even on the simplified, 2441, it says to provide for maintenance and use by the county of Houston along highways 44, 76, 26.
That might be their way of transferring responsibility. And I understand that because anytime you have a transaction, you want to lay out the roles and responsibilities of that transaction. But by you accepting that permission is no different than the snowmobile club accepting a permission from a private landowner. The underlying landowner is waiving their liability. You as a sponsor are just accepting or acknowledging that permission. It still is protected by several statutes. One, the recreation system statute. Two, the landowner liability statute that basically protects you as a fiscal agent. And you are held harmless unless you are negligent or gross negligent, meaning that you intentfully are trying to harm someone. Now, most sponsors require snowmobile clubs to carry liability insurance for that trail. And you typically would pass a resolution. Well, you have to pass a resolution in order to get funding that basically acknowledges that you're a fiscal agent and you're representing and you enter into an agreement with the state of Minnesota to obtain grant and aid funds, and you are more of a pass-through. So you are like the general contractor to the club, which is the subcontractor that does all of the work. And you can enter into a specific contract with the club, basically acknowledging that any permissions obtained by Houston County are the responsibility of the club. I mean, you have that ability to have a contract with your club as well to pass that similar type of concern that you have from the LUP down to the clubs as well.
Well, I wish Sam was here, our county attorney, but it says here under number 9 there, no assignment of this LUP is allowed. I'm just wanted to get clarification. Does that mean we can't pass on liability to the snowmobile clubs? It says here we can't do that.
And I apologize that you folks are concerned about signing this document. I really do, but this document is really between Houston County and DOT.
Yeah, I know.
And we're here to help bridge the understanding of the requirement for the grant and aid program. And I can't speak on that document. I have provided Brian and Polly with executed LUPs from other counties in northern Minnesota. There are statutes that also, am I still here?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. There are statutes that allow for two-way operation on one side of the road. And in order to do that, you must have permission from the road authority, specifically the road authority, to operate a two-way trail on one side of the road, because snowmobile riding across or against traffic after sunset is prohibited. And this is another tool that allows two-way operation on one side of the road after dark. And there's signs that go with those permissions once they are obtained from DNR Parks and Trails. DNR Parks and Trails provide signs for clubs to put in right-of-way for those trails.
Yeah, I understand that.
So Wade, question with regard to the liability. If, I understand that if we do not approve this, whoever has the most highway right-of-way is gonna lose the $264 per mile. But if we don't have the LUP, does, you know, the snowmobile clubs are covered by an association's insurance policy. If the LUP is not approved, do they lose the insurance coverage for those DOT mileage right-of-ways?
That would be a question for the club or the insurance underwriter.
Yeah.
I just know that we in good faith, knowing that there isn't permission for portions of trail, we have to omit them from the program. So there will be a reduction in the grant payment to clubs, because even though it's legal to ride a snowmobile in right-of-way, to operate and maintain a trail is different. That can include adding signage and or grooming, but legally just riding a snowmobile is still allowed. But we would have our maps remove those segments, so it would show users a disconnect, and folks would wonder, why doesn't this connect to here? And ultimately a reduction in the grant payment to the snowmobile club.
So that reduction of that money, where does that go?
It goes back and it stays in the snowmobile account.
Is this audit being done statewide or just certain regions?
Since the performance-based grant program started in 2009, 2 grants per DNR region, which means 8 grants a year, get a fiscal review. It's not an audit, it's a fiscal review. And within that fiscal review, that's when we look at all documentation paperwork required by the program. So the sponsor, the club, and the DNR sit down and we go through all the paperwork to make sure that all the paperwork is current, accurate, and landowner permissions where identified are in place. And the expectation or understanding is that a fiscal review helps all of us to increase performance, whether it's communication or payments or program requirements. But it prepares DNR in case there's a legislative audit on the DNR's grant program. It allows us that we've internally been reviewing our own grant paperwork. So we're held to a standard as well. So
Right. And again, is that being done right now throughout the whole state or just by regions?
it's by regions right now, but it's only a specific grant. Now, if you have 4 clubs, maybe one of your 4 clubs that you sponsor might have been selected in the last 20 years or 15 years. I don't know. I'd have to look back. But I know that Sue Danielson and the Rochester office have had a couple of fiscal reviews on specific grants. We don't do a fiscal review for a specific sponsor. We do a review on a specific grant. And so in this case, Sue would be able to identify which club or grant name this would be done on. But this isn't part of a fiscal review at this time. This is something that has been brought to our attention outside of a fiscal review. So there is no current fiscal review in place for Houston County at this time.
And there's
Can you guys hear me?
a shortfall from what I understand on the funding for the grant and aid program at this time. At the state level.
Can you repeat that?
I said it's been brought to the club that I belong to that there's a shortfall in the state funding for grant and aid for this year's prediction.
Absolutely. Yes, correct.
And then we're getting looked at for reducing where we have or don't have in the state road right away getting pushed to the county. It just looks kind of funny to me.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is Al Christian. So I'm the trail coordinator for Caledonia. So every year we go to a spring DNR meeting and they talk about these regulations that the DOT and the two-way traffic and all that. So I am the one that started all this. I'm trying to get our trails approved for use along these roadways. So if we don't have permission on these roadways, technically, as Wade was saying, we can't ride them. So we have been fiscally, I'll say, audited twice. Once since I've been the trail administrator, which started 7 years ago, and it was about 3 years prior. But the areas on the roads were never selected. So all I'm trying to do is get permission, trying to get our trails up to speed. So since I've been taken over, I'm trying to get ours up. So the same thing. I got to work on getting the county right-of-ways approved as well, and the township one. So I'm trying to get to that. And I started out with what I thought the biggest hurdle of getting the state. So that's what it's still boiling down to. But as Wade was alluding to, it is legal to ride on a road ditch, but all I'm trying to do is get the approvals the right way that we can ride and cross these state highways. So that's what this whole thing really started from. And being that it's the county, that goes to all 4 clubs. But it was started by myself, and all I'm trying to do is get our trails 100% approved the way they should be. So it's been lacking that it hasn't been done before, but just trying to get it done.
Could you repeat your name? I didn't catch that.
Al Christian.
Al Christian.
I live,
Al Christian? Yep. Okay.
Al Christian, yep.
So Al, why haven't you tried to get an agreement with the Minnesota DOT on permission to run trails through their right of way instead of having the county do it?
This is what you have to do. This is the process right here. Because part of this whole thing is it's a limited use permit, which if you read the bottom, it says standardized form. So this is a standard form, whether you're building a facility in their right of way or a bridge or a walk bridge. So that's where part of that liability comes down to, in my opinion. All we're doing is we're just running our same exact trails that we've had some in place for 50 years, long before some of these requirements that I was aware of. And that's all we're trying to do is we're saying, here's where we're at and here's where we're crossing and we need to get approvals done.
But again, I'm saying why not have an agreement with Minnesota DOT and the snowmobile clubs and for DNR for proof that you're allowed to use those trails along Minnesota state highways? I know the county is the fiscal agent. We're just the pass-through for the money. We pass the money through. We're not in the snowmobile trail business. That's you guys in the state and have an agreement with the DOT on that.
Yep. You would have to ask somebody at the DOT who's not on the call, but this is the process to get approval to go across those. the limited use permit,
Yeah, I get that.
which still, because you're the sponsor, no different than when we sign our landowner permission slips. That slip is actually saying that it's agreement between the landowner and the sponsor, which is Houston County. So our landowners are signing off that it's okay to cross their land, and it's an agreement with Houston County.
With Houston County or with the Snowmobile Club?
Houston County. It's with Houston County because you're the sponsor.
We don't sign.
I don't think that's right, but.
Yes, it is right.
Al, I've never seen any agreements between landowners and the county,
Nope.
ever.
So if I may, I mentioned this earlier, that all permissions must be in the name of the sponsor because the sponsor is a governmental entity, which makes it permission to a public entity for a public trail. And in some cases, or most cases, permission must be granted. It can be verbal or written, but you may not see those because the club has taken that responsibility to obtain those permissions, but they are granted to you, the sponsor. I mentioned that early on. I'm trying to clarify that MnDOT is basically granting that formal permission, but they're asking you to sign off on it to acknowledge receipt of it. Now, the program doesn't require that. The program doesn't require private landowners to grant permission to Houston County and you folks sign off on it either. They all have granted you, Houston County, permission to operate and maintain a snowmobile trail. You have all these other permissions in your name, and I don't think that you've had a lawsuit yet. But you are the sponsor. You're the governmental entity, and the fiscal agent. And the name of the permission must be granted to the sponsor, unless, like I mentioned, there's a contract in place that allows the clubs to obtain permission in their name. Otherwise, the program requires that all land, every 22,000 miles of snowmobile trail, is permitted, and it is permitted to a sponsor. It's not permitted to a club. And Al understands that, and Al understands that.
Yep.
That this is MnDOT's way of formally granting permission.
Yeah, that'd be fine if that's all they were doing, but they got all this other language holding us responsible for quite a bit more than that. And that's what bothers us and the county attorney, so. But like you've said before on several occasions, that if a club has verbal agreement, email chains, whatever, that they have permission to use the state right-of-way for their trails, that's sufficient for the DNR to release those funds, correct?
That is correct. It meets program guidelines, correct.
All right. Whether we sign this.
But as Wade also stated, this is an agreement as well with you guys in DOT. So the verbal is okay for DNR, but you guys have to do this for DOT.
Well, we're gonna have to have a conversation with DOT,
And I appreciate that, but just know that the clubs are gonna be, the benchmarks will not be processed and they will not be receiving their funds until we receive clarification on what mileage that we will be funding. And I know the first benchmark already came in on December 15th, and I'm just in the process of doing those now. But also now, because we know Fillmore and Goodhue County are in the same boat, I'm gonna have to send them emails as well to let them know that they're not gonna be able to have their benchmarks processed either. And that is, yes, they'll come back and they'll be upset with me, but I'm going to refer them to the counties to talk to the county people. So I'm sorry, Polly, I apologize to you because you're gonna get the backlash of this.
Well, that's the thing. We're getting thrown under the bus on here, and all we've been is the fiscal agent.
But these have been signed for many, many, many years. So I guess I'm somewhat new to GIA myself. I've only been in this for 3 years, and this is my first time I've encountered something like this. So I'm really confused as to why all of a sudden everybody wants to hold up and not sign these when they've been signed for years.
We haven't signed one of these ever. We've searched for signature of this type of LUP agreement, and we cannot find one. Is that correct, Brian?
Not for with the MnDOT right away.
Not for the MnDOT right away. This is something new.
Do you have documentation that shows that being signed, Sue?
We don't, like Wade said, we don't keep that documentation. That's between you and your clubs.
What do the clubs think? You guys are, a bunch of you guys got from different clubs, or what's your opinion?
Well, like they talked about, like Alan brought up, excuse me, we've been.
Would you want to come forward just so we can hear you?
Recording.
Please.
Same trails have been used for.
Can you come up to the microphone for us?
State your name just so we know.
This is my voice. Rick Vossart with the Caledonia Snow Gophers. And we've had these trails since back in 71, 72. We've been running the same areas for years. We've been running road ditches, been going both directions and, in the highway right away. We never heard anything about this either until now. And just a couple of weeks ago, actually, Polly let us know what was going on. So we're just really concerned, and looking back, we get the pay from all the landowners. We got paperwork on every landowner that we have. We have like 280 landowners that our club deals with. And so they sign off of it, gives us the okay to use their land. We've never done anything with the highway ditches. Didn't know about it till this came about. So we've never seen this before either.
Well, Bob, you mentioned there's a statute allowing.
Right, you can run in there, but the statute doesn't want you going against the traffic.
Right.
So I guess my question that I've written down here was, one of them I wanted to ask is if these clubs make a 90-degree cross and have a trail on each side of the roadway, which they indicate in their packet isn't as safe as the two-way traffics, would that alleviate the problem here?
So, if I may, go down to the river station in Brownsville. Trail runs right along there. If we have to cross that other side and run on the other side, it doesn't allow it. So down by Houston on Highway 76, for instance, it's not a guardrail, but it's the posts and the cables. There is no room to run it. So that's the issue, is our county in the driftless area does not allow easy access to run down both sides of the road like northern Minnesota or western Minnesota. So that's the problem. It's not just as easy as saying, well, just run both sides of the road. It's impossible.
Right.
But the statute also, if you read it, brings in there that you can come up onto the road shoulder or off of the inside slope where there is obstacles in that. So in our area, you're allowed to do that already, like for bridges, et cetera, guardrails. What I'm looking at is there a workaround so the clubs get their funding if where it is possible that they do run it on both sides of the road. Like your area on Highway 1626 up by the golf course between Spring Grove and Caledonia, where it comes out in the road ditch there along outside of Spring Grove. Is there a workaround to get their funding until we get this? If they mark and utilize that area of both sides of the road ditch, so they're not doing the opposing traffic as is indicated in the documents provided to us.
Or situation Highway 26, as Al mentioned there, you guys all know what that's like down there, and we just run from River Station down to Wildcat.
The short area.
And then it gets back in the trail. And then in Caledonia, it's just out a little stretch by the golf course from the implement dealer from Old County or County 12. Of course, just out past our groomer shed, and that stretch there. Just the lay of the land there, sometimes you can't already get on both sides of the road. And then we got a little stretch in 76 towards Zeitzen. That is the same situation. We had to move from one side of the road to the other several years back, and like I said, we've never had any issues, but.
It's like we need a Department of Common Sense.
The what?
A Department of Common Sense.
You're going to be increasing the number of times you got to cross back and forth on these highways. And so if you read that first paragraph, the DOT is saying it's going to be safer to run two-way traffic and worry about the headlights running back and forth than it is to increase all these highway crossings.
Exactly. So you're already pointing that out was the point I was trying to make.
Yes.
Yep.
So Al, are you working with, landowners that have CRP ground on getting, agreements with them as well?
Yep, I am, as well as each of our individual trailheads, working through that CRP stuff. Yep.
Is that something that?
And or trying to get around them, or around their CRP land. So sometimes we can get around just their CRP land and go in cropland versus CRP.
Well, from what I understand on the landowners with CRP ground that allow snowmobile trails to go through, in that agreement with the FSA, federal government, that the landowner is responsible for any damage done to the cover for that CRP. And so now I've had club members tell me that what the landowner is doing is just saying, well, the heck with it, I'm gonna get you beyond my land. So that kind of throws a wrench into the trail system too.
Well, what our club is doing is we talked with these landowners, and if there's any damage done financially, we will take care of that problem.
Okay.
We will pay them for.
That's part of your agreement.
And that's okay with the feds on that?
That I don't know.
Okay.
But I think all they're worried about, as long as somebody pays them,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep. So, Sue, I just want to make clarification. Wade said that if a snowmobile club has verbal agreement, email chains specifying that they have an agreement in place on use of state right-of-way, that's sufficient to retain these funds for that section. Is that correct?
At this point in time, with how this is all happening, I would need to see something in writing in order to know that that the permissions are there in order to process those benchmarks for clubs.
All right. Okay.
But like Wade said too before, the problem with not signing these too is now the clubs cannot go in and maintain and groom those sections of trail. So it's adding another layer for the clubs too, because maybe where they could come up on a road or somewhere to turn around with a groomer through these right-of-ways, now they can't be in these right-of-ways with their grooming equipment or any equipment, because we no longer have any, it's gonna make it really complicated for the clubs and even the connectivity of the trails. If all of a sudden somebody says, oh, we don't want you on this mile of land because we don't have agreements in place, the connectivity of the trails, so potentially we're losing miles of recreation.
Snowmobiles can go, why can't the groomer?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It seems to me we need to have a conversation with DOT. If we could line up, if we could table this for now and line up a Zoom meeting with DOT to get their take on this, and we can express our concerns as well. I think that'd be the better way to go.
I'd like to know out of the 87 counties how many are.
Right. Yep.
So is that a motion?
Sue, how many counties have already approved this? Do all of them except for the few down here in the corner?
I don't know. Again, like Wade says, we don't see them until fiscal reviews come in. That's something that MnDOT would have that information for you for.
And then you said that I know that snowmobiles are allowed to run in the ditches of the highway with or without this LUP. Why can't the groomers go down them?
Technically, the snowmobiles can go down there, but again, we're still supposed to have permission. No different than if you get shut off on a private landowner.
No. The state statute says they're allowed.
Groomers don't meet the statutory definition of a snowmobile. They're not steered by skis and or registered as a snowmobile.
They're only allowed to run with the traffic at nighttime. That's what the statute states. So that's where you got to have two-way traffic. You got to have them on both sides of the highway.
That ain't
And
always
as soon as we
possible.
mark a sign and somebody goes out there and they're running the wrong way down there at night, technically they're in violation.
Well, they'll just have to pick up their groomer and not groom until they get off the right of way.
Or see
No,
if
but
And
I'm
then
saying
those
even a
sections-
snowmobile, even a snowmobiler at night cannot be going down facing against traffic. So that's why you gotta have one-way traffic on both sides of the ditches, which is what we cannot do because of some of these obstacles. So that's why we're coming up with this limited use permit.
And to kind of piggyback off of what Al just said, then also, if those are no longer gonna be part of the GIA funding, and Wade, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if those are no longer gonna be GIA funded portions of trail, they can't be signed by the GIA clubs anymore either, so there's not gonna be any signage in those areas. It's just gonna stop, the sign is just gonna all of a sudden stop, and you're adding a lot of danger and a lot of liability potentially to things.
So the club, you're saying no signage. If the clubs go put up signs, who's gonna take them down?
No, I'm saying those areas would not be able to be signed by the clubs. If the clubs aren't being funded for a certain amount of mileage, they're not gonna sign those areas. Those are no longer considered GIA miles, so those are no longer signed by the GIA clubs.
And a lot of unknown questions.
Well, bottom line is this agreement here, it's 8 pages. I mean, that's our problem, that's our concern, and that's what our county attorney has us concerned, and even MCIT said, you guys can't be signing on to that, you're gonna be held reliable for all this stuff, so. And I know you say, well, yeah, if it ever comes to court, that gets thrown out, well, there's no guarantee to that.
So how many times have you had liability in the last 50 years? Because we're running the same trails that we were before, Caledonia's portion.
Well, that's because we've never had any agreement like this either, so, but now it says the county is liable.
State is held harmless.
And the state is off the hook.
Well, I think we should table this until we get with the DOT and get some information from them.
I agree, I think we just need to table it for now, keep working, try to get the DOT and keep working through this.
With the amount of snow we've had lately, this is a mute issue almost.
Well, and that's
Next year.
That's the reason for the low revenue. People aren't renewing their licenses on their snowmobiles. They're not buying snowmobiles and.
But unfortunately, they still are incurring the expenses.
They are.
So, I mean, even though there's a lack of snow, them clubs, in order to stay in existence, rely on this funding. And for the state to go ahead and suspend it, throwing us under the bus the way it is, I think is wrong. And I truly believe that maybe it's because they're low on funding. It's kind of the way it looks to me.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like being thrown under the bus as the county on this deal. I mean, we're the ones, if we're not signing this.
So again, it's the DOT, that's their whole contract with you guys, and just know and understand this. So it's not just the $7,000 that you're talking about on this mileage. There will not be any first benchmark payments, which is 45% of that $101,000. That is not going out to the counties, to the county clubs, put it that way.
So they don't get any of the money.
They won't get any of it because none of the benchmark payments will be approved because they don't know what to approve, what dollar amount to approve.
So
Is that correct, Sue?
We've never had the LUP in the past and got the money now because there's an LUP brought forward by somebody asking about it. Now the money can't come without the LUP.
That is correct, because we know you don't have permission to be on that portion of the roadway.
But why are you withholding the money even for everything if it's just the $7,000?
Correct.
If it's $101,000 total, subtract 7,000, should still get the other 90-some thousand.
Each of the 4 clubs are funded individually, and they're done on percentages throughout the year. And so I have to have maps from your county to know how many miles per club are in the right of way, so we can subtract that mileage from those clubs to get the grants paid accurately. Because the grant payment on my portion too is my fiscal responsibility. And if I'm paying improperly and I get audited or my office gets audited, I'm the one in trouble for that, for handing out too much money. So until we can get maps with how many miles of roadway per club need to be removed, then we can get those benchmarks paid.
Plus,
But at this point right now, we can't.
but if the clubs could provide written agreements, verbal agreements, email chains, whatever, saying that they got permission from the DOT to have their trail along their right of way, that should be sufficient.
Wade, I'm gonna ask you to chime in on that.
You keep using the term agreements, and I just want to clarify, it's permission. DNR requires permission. Agreement usually means that two parties have to sign something. We only require permission, whether it be verbal or written. And yes, to further support what you've been saying, if DOT grants an email or a verbal permission that Houston County, can operate and maintain a snowmobile trail, DNR, yes, will totally accept that as permission.
All right.
I also want to clarify that Stu, I don't think, or the DNR is saying that we're not going to pay or fund all portions of the grant. What Sue is saying is until the determination is made to what specifically the mileage is to those portions that don't have the permissions in place, that's what will be reduced. And I'll also add this, that might be reduced on the first benchmark. But if those permissions get put in place by the end of the snowmobile season, we will certainly add that back into their total reimbursement.
All right.
So we're not trying to penalize or withhold funds. We want to make sure that we're following program requirements. And so if at this point it's $7,000 that's withheld in the first benchmark, we'll make that up on the fourth benchmark or the third benchmark. We want the clubs to make sure that they have all their public funding for these public trails.
All right.
And so we have to follow our policies.
Okay.
I got one more question for you, Wayne, or maybe Sue. The LUP that we were provided here that has all the verbiage that our county attorney had some red flags with, when was that last revised?
I'm assuming that would be a DOT question.
The DNR, it's a DOT question.
So the ones that you have on file with the other counties, are they the most current one, is what I'm curious about, is if this legal language that puts the liabilities, on the sponsor, which would be the county, is that the same one that's being used statewide, or has it just been revised? Is this something that's been changed? Is it new?
I'll answer that with a question. Brian has received an example. He asked for an example, and I provided him an example of a county that has assigned an LUP. He might be able to clarify if the documentation is identical. I will just mention that the document or the concerns you may have, you have to really take that up with MnDOT.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
So
understand.
I guess what I'm looking at is that something that can be revised with MnDOT that would alleviate some of the concerns that our county attorney has. And again, that's probably gonna be a MnDOT question.
Yeah, I can answer that question. So the language that Wade provided from the previous agreement, it's a little bit different from what's in the current language for the liability stuff. But it's not substantially different, tweak some words, change some stuff around from a few years ago, but that language is there. In speaking with the district engineer from MnDOT, he said that is state of Minnesota, their attorney general's office, or the state attorneys that are saying that language needs to be in every single contract or every single agreement that MnDOT has.
So it's new.
So they are not allowed to take it out of that agreement. So it's a state requirement that's in there, and they cannot
Put
take
the
it
same
out.
verbiage on there if they're replacing a culvert or a bridge or if they're running a snowmobile trail?
Yes.
That blanket?
They're using that.
Your red flags
It sounds like it's blanket language. And then the other question, we can go back to the mileage within MnDOT right away. So I put together that quick map that I believe Commissioner Schultz and Johnson both got those. So that was a quick map that I put together. I'm sure that we can get those emailed out quickly to the clubs and let the clubs say they agree or disagree with that mileage. What mileage is there, because I didn't divide it out by club, I just looked at the entire county. I think we could probably do that pretty quickly to confirm what mileage would be reduced. So if the clubs are eligible for 45% of that funding, let's not hold up all the money. Let's try to get that mileage addressed within a day or two and get that onto the DNR if the grant and aid agreement is approved. There's no reason to hold up everything, so I think that could be done even if the LUP does not get approved today.
Yep, I agree.
What do you guys think?
Can the clubs get that back as soon as possible so we can revise it and relook at it and try not to hold up the funds any longer?
Well, they'll get it, but
They'll have to.
until we get a clarification from DOT and so, I don't know.
Yeah, and I can,
The remainder of that 7,000,
I can definitely try to get the DOT on during the next meeting on,
31st.
Or 31st. I was hoping that someone was gonna be on today.
Yep.
The person I talked to, I know that he wasn't available, but he was hoping his staff would be, so. At least, if that LUP gets withheld a couple weeks, let's not try to hold up everything.
All right, I agree. Let's move forward with that. And
Yeah, I think so too.
But you guys are called Gopherland.
That's the total
Overland
system.
Trails.
Yeah.
So by not doing this, this does not affect the miles on private land. And that's the 45% you just talked about there, Brian?
if Brian gets the map out,
Yeah, so there's two agreements. So item number 5 on the agenda is the MnDOT limited use permit, which is just for MnDOT right of way. So, if I recall correctly, 26 miles roughly, or whatever that length was. So that's what this limited use permit is, roughly $7,000 worth that gets put into jeopardy if that does not get approved. The second one number six is the state of Minnesota grant contract agreement. That affects the entire length of the trail, both within MnDOT right of way and outside the right of way. So that grant and aid agreement, Houston County has approved that, I believe, virtually every year, or
yeah.
every year.
Number 6 is next on our.
Yeah, so that gets approved, and that's what's tied to the DNR with the DNR funding.
Yep.
So
Okay.
kind of as Wade and Sue has kind of indicated, we kind of have two separate issues that get tied together with the trails. So the grant and aid, at least that one, is the one that ties the money to anything that's approved, so.
So we'll table number 5 for now.
Yep.
And we'll move on to action item number 6, to consider approving the Minnesota grant contract agreement with the Snowmobile Grant and Aid Program for 2025.
So move.
That we can know.
Is there a second to that?
Difference with that would be the amounts will change then? That's listed in the contract?
It will.
Well, does the amount change within the contract, or does that stay the same for this grant and aid? But the DNR is not eligible for that trail unless or until MnDOT LUP gets approved. So I think you approve the full amount, and then those
We're gonna
trails.
approve the full amount, because some clubs might have verbal agreements, email chains, whatever, that they have permission on the right of way. So they might still be able to get their money. So we're gonna approve the full amount. Been motioned and made and seconded. Any other further discussion?
We approve the full amount. Sue's gonna withhold.
Well, no, we're gonna leave, that's their,
Up to them.
that's them.
All right.
We're gonna do our end here.
Yep.
Did you make the motion?
No, Greg made the motion.
Greg made a motion. Who made it a second?
I'll second it.
Bob Schultz, second. Any other further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you.
Go through the,
Thanks, Rick. We'll get it right pretty quick.
Hopefully.
Thanks, Al, Sue, and Wade. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep, thank you.
We'll move on from there. Yep.
Number 7. Which one are we on, 7?
All right, number 7, consider awarding the box culvert project on County Highway 10 to Minowa Construction.
So,
Bid was $461,933.57.
and if I can go back to number 5 just for a second, as I go to try to get MnDOT at that meeting, I'm assuming that you want to have Attorney Yant here if possible, or if
Yep.
he's not, should I try to get Sue or someone else from the attorney's
Yes,
office?
Yes,
Are you gonna do that like a land use committee meeting
no.
or board?
I'm gonna try to do it with the full board on the
On the
December
31st.
31st. So,
Be interesting to see who's available.
Well, yeah,
Sam's gonna be here for that cannabis thing.
Talking about DOT.
yeah, I'm gonna go straight to the district engineer and I'm gonna tell him if he can't get me the normal person, find me someone else that can be here with the DOT.
We'll take Attorney Ellison, if he could show up, that'd be great.
Attorney General.
Good luck. Yeah.
Thanks, Rick.
Yep. Okay, so on to item number 7 for the county 10 box culvert project. So we bid that out, we received 9 bids, so lots of interest, lots of bidders this year. The low bid was Minowa Construction, $461,933.57. The original estimate was $562,290.25. So the low bid came in just under 100,000 under. So, numbers for box culverts and bridges costs really jumped up a couple years ago after COVID hit. There's a backlog in supply. So engineers' estimates, everything kind of increased with inflation as stuff took place. And now that the backlog is being caught up, there's been some additional pressure on the contractors and suppliers to get their prices back down to what we feel is reasonable and trying to get suitable competition in the states. So ultimately, the costs have come down, so it's not totally unexpected that the numbers are substantially below the estimate. Looking at the bids, there isn't a single line that looks like it's been busted or unbalanced bids. So we do feel that Minowa can perform the work, get it done at the price bid. So recommendation is to award the contract to Minowa Construction.
I'll make a motion to award the contract to Minowa Construction.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Looking at the bidding process here, there's one that's all the way from Wisconsin, you know, it's they really must be hungry right now. It's the best time to be bidding.
Getting competitive bids, yep. Anything else? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Number 8, consider approving 2025 disaster tax credit in the amount of $23,586 for R&H Properties for the fire that occurred on August 2024.
So I'll do the abatement first for the traditions. That's in La Crescent, or is that?
That's number 9.
That's number 9, so,
We'll do
yeah,
number
we're
8 first
dealing with RH now.
Okay. So that is, we, previously approved the abatement, which was for this year. So this is a credit. So what this is, basically is you're basically saying they don't have to pay that $23,586 in tax. So they get a credit on that tax because the building's not there, is what this would be. The only thing, so you guys know all the information, it's tax. So if you give them a credit of that 23,000, everybody else makes that up.
I understand that, it gets spread out.
Yeah, so that's.
So what if they get it rebuilt within the year?
Then I suppose we'd have to come back and make a resolution that they have to pay the amount that's, once they get back in.
You'd have to get it reappraised at their,
Yeah, at the new amount, and then calculate the tax and prorate that for the year, for the months that they didn't have the building, I guess, for the credit.
because they've already gotten the credit for this year, 2024.
Yep, they got the abatement for this year because of the fire.
In August.
From this year.
Yep.
This is for next year because they don't have a building to start the year.
Right.
So, and if they do get a building built, then they would only be eligible for the months that they didn't have a building.
So you'd have to come back and say,
Yep, they have a building now, this is the value, this was the tax on it, and then they'd have to pay that difference.
okay.
Basically,
Is that right, Joe?
I'm on. So, the timeline for the abatement portion of it is January 2nd of 2023. life was good, the building was there, everything was good. That value is set January 2nd of 2023 for payable taxes in 2024.
Yeah, yeah.
So then in 2024, disaster happens, they're out for like 4 months, 4 solid months. So then that was approved back in September. So January 2nd of 2024, we set our values for 2025 payable. At that time, life was good, building was still there. In August of 2024, building burns down. So for 2025 payable, that's based on 2024 January 2nd's value. So they would have to pay the full amount even though they don't have a building there. Right now, they're in the process of rebuilding. So on January 2nd coming up here, we'll set our value based on what's done on their new construction, and that'll be for 2026 payable.
All right.
And if they get it done before the end of the year, we do the prorated thing?
Yep, so it'll be likely prorated here on January 2nd of 2025 for 2026 payable. In 2026 on January 2nd, if that building is complete, then we'd go to the full value for 2027 payable.
So either way, they're gonna get that 23,000 credit, even if they build next spring.
Basically, and then they won't get, so whatever they build throughout this year won't be taxed until
Till 26.
2026, because we won't put it on until January 2nd, so.
All right.
Is the credit based on 100% of the year or just that portion of the year that they didn't have?
This is based on 100% of the year for 2025 taxes.
On that specific building that burnt.
Yeah.
Just on the
Not- yeah,
building
not the
portion,
land.
not the
There's-
land.
Not the land and not there's still partial building there, correct?
No, it was,
It's all gone.
Oh, okay, I
was
didn't
all
know.
gone, yep.
All right. I thought there was still the front part, but.
Just that front part, but that was so damaged
Yeah,
by the
they
fire that
tore
it
it down.
really doesn't have any value.
Okay, yep.
So the front part of the building's still there.
Just a little entry.
Wasn't that his office? Joe
Yeah,
Rude's
it's kind of
office?
a little entry and maybe an office or something, but the metal from it was so
There's
damaged.
no value to it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just the shell, basically, the whole inside's gone.
Okay, so we're just approving a tax credit in the amount of 23,586 for 2025.
Yep.
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I'll do the, consider the disaster abatement for Traditions in La Crescent.
Okay, so this is the Traditions, the nursing home in La Crescent that burned down in October, I believe. So this is an abatement, this isn't the credit, so this is giving them, for these 3 months that they didn't have the building, the tax for those 3 months, which would be $3,162. That's taking the value of the building off that they didn't get use of the 3 months. So the total value of the building at the beginning of the year was $975,500. And then I just prorated that value by month, and so they got $812,900 worth of that building use. Now that leaves $162,600 of value that they didn't get use of, which relates to $3,162 in tax.
Okay.
Is that just county tax or is that county, city, and school?
That's counting everything, county, city, school.
That's everything, okay.
And it's strictly a slab at this time. Nothing has even started, so I move to approve that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Okay, we did 10. Number 11, discuss ARPA funds. possible allocation.
All right. So we have an updated list. And if we go to the back, there were some adjustments made on some of the purchases that we had allocated dollars to that came in lower. The two that I don't have the exact amount on are the Caseworks system and the Traverse to Caseworks conversion. So, and the cover tops that we got for recycling came in lower than what had been allocated. So looking at the ARPA, after those adjustments, we were at $179,294 to that we have to allocate prior to the end of the year. The LACTF is the same. We need to allocate that prior to the end of the year. So we had a total of $214,102 that we need to allocate prior to the end of the year. In going through, there's been continual discussion about the water heaters that need to be replaced over at the Justice Center. And there was talk that it was going to cost $135,000 or $130,000, $65,000 apiece, but there was actually a quote received from Winona Controls back in October that shows the cost to replace the two is $89,500. Brian is making sure that they're not going to change that, or if there is a change to it, and we'll, take that into consideration. So we looked at a couple of the capital purchases that we would be making next year and actually get quotes for those and have those that funds allocated to those purchases yet this year. They won't, of course, be purchased, but we'll do a fund balance entry applied so that it comes off of our bottom line of our budget from what we were short. The 89.5 doesn't have an effect because we had already put that in there, so that was taken into account. So our $85,000 budget deficit that we had with based on the 7.5% levy is taken care of with those next items. We looked at IT, and we can dedicate money to the SANS. The dual factor authentication is $12,000. Brian has a greater roller package. He had originally asked for 2. It was reduced to 1 through our initial budget rounds. So for the remaining one that's in the budget, we'll take $50,000 of ARPA money. The difference between, what our budget deficit is and what we have left for the ARPA, we will apply to election equipment. Either the election equipment that was purchased this year or the election equipment that was already approved for next year.
Okay.
So that brings our ARPA basically down to 0, which is where we need to be by December 31st.
Yep.
So.
Perfect.
Any questions to this?
Nope.
You'd like a motion to approve?
That said, I'll make a motion to approve the
Reallocation.
ARPA allocations as presented, the reallocations and use of the remaining ARPA funds.
Second.
And LACTF.
And the LHP. That's that 100,000 federal.
Dewey seconded it. Any other further discussion?
Help the budget.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Number 12, consider approval of the 2024 budget adjustments to accurately reflect the annual activity.
So the one in front of you is actually the highway department. That's the only one that we've really gotten through, or Sheila and Brian have gotten through completely. So that's the one you have. It's this one.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have one of those?
We do now.
Okay, so this is actually the 2024 budget, and when the 2024 budget was approved, we had a significant budget deficit. In highway department, it was $109,000. And we knew throughout the year that, you know, it would change. So with these budget amendments reflecting more the actual expenses, it brings that 109,000 budget deficit down to 49,997. So that's the amount, you know, depending on the December activity, that's the amount that will basically come out of their fund balance for 2024.
The highways fund balance.
Highways.
Where is the 49,000?
It's 59,000, isn't it?
59,771.
That's the change. They're making their budget $59,000 better.
Okay,
So they're eliminating that much from the original budget deficit. So the difference between 109,768, which was their original budget deficit, and adding this, you know, to the better, the difference is $49,997.
gotcha.
And there will be more budget changes on December 31st for different areas.
Okay.
And we always like to, you know, do a little, making our budget closer to what our actual expenditures are so that we don't have to do a lot of variance explanations.
Mm-hmm.
So, like that.
Corrections throughout the year. All right. Is there a motion to approve the adjustments? Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, we'll move on to payments, reviewing and approving payments. Any questions on those?
Lots of payments going on. This is just to settle up the end of the year payments to these different entities here. Right.
Their annual, monthly,
This is just a regular payment run.
yep,
We will be processing on the 31st. You'll have approval lists like you normally do on Thursday, but then on December 31st, we do have accounts that we have to clear out that are typically fiscal agent things, so we just print those right on the 31st, and then you get a listing, you'll get a listing at the next meeting of what we had to pay.
so the payment to Fillmore County Extension Office, is that for, supplies or something?
How much was it again?
2,500.
I would assume it's for the farm safety.
Oh, farm safety day camp thing, all right, yep.
All these other payments are the second half
The
allocations.
appropriations.
Appropriations, yeah.
Cleaning up or clearing up the ones we usually pay.
Is there a motion to approve the payments?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Do we want to go to administrator updates and commissioner updates and then go to closed session?
Don't we have number 14?
Oh, I'm sorry, am I missing one?
Certified levy.
Well, we got to do 14 after or don't.
What?
You want to go to 14 now? Labor negotiation?
No.
No, the.
Is the resolution of levy.
adopting the
Certified levy.
I must have the wrong. I had my old one, I'm sorry.
Okay, number 14.
That was my copy.
You know, this is the levy that we adopted back in September is the proposed. It does include the 7.5% increase, which, balances the budget that we have at present. We have to adopt it within 5 business days of the 20th, which, since we are closed on the 24th, we probably could make it on the 31st, but if they would say, ooh, no, the 24th isn't a, holiday for anybody else, I'd hate to have them say, you don't get to have your levy increase. So that's why I wanted to have the levy approved today and the budget on the 31st.
Okay.
With the adjustments that we made through ARPA today, the levy is balanced to the 7.5% that we've
It balances the budget.
proposed for the funding of Houston County for next year and the revenues. I see no reason to make any changes to that since we've got it down to the 7.5% increase and balanced it that way. So I'd make a motion to approve the levy being $14,737,549.
So by approving this, come the 31st, we can't lower it.
Correct.
We're already.
We can't raise it either.
Well, we can't raise it no matter what, because we set the preliminary levy in September, so.
Right.
But by approving this right now, we can't, this commits us to the 7.5.
Right.
Motion's been made, is there a second?
Second. We've gone through the budgets as best we could, and again, the only thing that would change is some of the anticipated expenses come in less.
Correct. We have the budget balanced right now, using ARPA funds, but we also don't have all of the contract
Negotiations.
changes in the budget. So we're going to end up not having a balanced budget because we'll add those later as we get them all calculated.
Plus, we've used some fund balance as well, right?
Right. There is $300,000 of fund balance put into our 2025 budget.
Yep.
Just to get it where we're at now.
Yep. All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Now, should we go to administrator updates and board updates and commissioner reports, and then we can go into closed session? So Carol, do you got anything more you want to bring up?
No, this is pretty much covers what we've been doing.
Okay. I'll make mine brief. I was at the MC, of course. Attended several of the meetings. I went to a reorganizational session. Turned out that was mostly Dakota County. They created a fleet department. So they took all the fleet maintenance away from the department heads and created a fleet department. Well, that's Dakota County. That's pretty big. So I didn't get much out of that one. Attended the cannabis thing. They talked about some of the educational stuff they're gonna do for cannabis. Brought up some situations where there's a lot of concern for the youth that are gonna be hopefully not affected by it, but potential of, health concerns for the youth and for the public. That's where they had somebody from Washington County go through their ordinance and what they did, and I sent that all to you guys to review. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of questions, and I felt bad for those people up there because they're just trying to decipher this as well. And I made a comment at the end. I said, we need to talk to our legislatures to have them get their act together and get some clarity, because there's obviously going to be more changes coming down the road, because they're already talking about language changes on this stuff. So, also went to a Human Services session. Man, that's complicated. Tried to get as much out of that as what, they talked about the green screen, working with the green screen. I don't know, is that something we do, John? Everybody's, they've been talking about that situation. Yep, getting that, trying to modernize that's system and like Marcia Ward said, we've been talking about this for as long as I've been a commissioner. She's been in 26 years, so. Got a little update on the state budget and where they're at. Right now, they're spending more than they're taking in, so they're in a, what do you call it, a budget inversion, so that's why the 1.7 billion projection went down to 616 million. Projected out in 28, 29 to be a 5 billion deficit, so there's gonna have to be some changes made, whether it be cuts or taxes, to raise revenues or what, but there's and being that the House is tied between Republican and Democrat, and the Senate is just one vote majority for Democrat, it's gonna be a tough session, and it's like the one guy they had that spoke about this from, he's a news guy, he said it's not gonna end well. That's what he said, so. But, you know, budget talks it's something that we gotta look at as a state, so. I guess that's all I got. I could go into more depth, but we have run out of time here, so. Dewey, what do you got?
I attended public health group last week after our regular meeting, and a lot of good information. One of the things I just want to highlight, our dental program here is, we're the only one in the state. People are looking at it and they're trying to possibly expand it. And of course, with our new remodel going on out there, it's very likely to improve for everybody. That's a great thing. It's a few other little things here, but all of the cities are involved with the SHIP program, statewide health improvement partnership here in Houston County. That's what I took from that note. A lot of programs to work with senior citizens. Bree talked about it. There's over 200 cases of people over 65 being assisted through public health. So they're doing a great job to keep people going.
Yep.
And there's other little notes, but that's the highlight. Tomorrow I'll be going over to solid waste La Crosse County for their end of the year report. So I have to report on that when we come back.
Okay.
Unless you want to go, Robert. I'll go.
Don't look at me. I'm Bob.
All right. Thanks, Dewey.
That's it.
Commissioner Burns.
I went to a SEMCAC meeting with regard to the year end and what they're anticipating. So they got their budget put together on the basis of what they received this year, plus anticipated increases, and it's gonna be dangerous as far as the funding, like you're talking about with the state of Minnesota and their revenues and whatnot, so there's gonna be some problems, I think, as far as food shelves, as far as food for the, elderly meals and whatnot, so that things might end up a little tougher than they are this year for them. Then Bluff Country sent us a report on the housing status as far as the funding through Bluff Country. They loaned out, or there are loans out supported by Bluff Country in a total of $3,078,838. Of that amount, Houston County has $918,785, and Fillmore's got $2,160,000. So Fillmore's got 70%, we got 30% of the monies loaned out in the last year. There's been years where it's been the other way around, and Houston's had more than Fillmore, so it balances, but But on the monies that have been used to defer down payments and to help with the payments for the mortgages, that also comes out in the same kind of a mix, where Fillmore County has got a larger share of it. Houston County had a total of 96,000 out of a $285,000 that was spent. Just unbalanced this year, and other years it's been the other way, so. But there's been quite a bit of activity, and look forward to more. That's all I got.
Okay. Commissioner Schultz?
I didn't have any meetings I had to attend. I did get some phone calls over our snowmobile thing the last day and a half. Then I also got a couple calls, I shared the email with Eric on over some zoning building on Selkie Road, so more stuff we'll have to look at, I think, down the road. Nothing for today.
Greg?
I had some union negotiations and I got a meeting Thursday at 10 o'clock, Bob, airport.
Yep.
And we'll talk about the negotiations in a few minutes. So that's all I got.
I should just mention too that on the 31st, we're gonna have that cannabis ordinance looked at again. That should be a public hearing as well. Shouldn't it? Because we tweaked it.
Public hearing.
We had a public hearing on that specific ordinance, but now we're gonna change it. I've been told that we gotta have another public hearing for that change. We still have time to do it, don't we?
I was gonna say,
We can post it though?
To post it 10 days?
Be tight.
Paper, get it into the paper.
Who said that we had to do that again?
Somebody up at AMC said, well, if you're changing the hearing, the language of that ordinance, you have to technically have another public hearing on that changed.
The public hearing is just for public comment, but you went ahead and changed things.
That's right.
That might be true for an existing ordinance, but this ordinance doesn't exist yet. So I don't know.
We took information in and are going to tweak it from that information.
Either way, it's probably best to
Yeah, you could.
have somebody, I mean, if we can get the advertising in.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we can get the advertising in to make it another public hearing, that's best to do that.
I'm not sure if there's an early deadline. I mean,
Right, right. Yep.
Well, it won't make this week's paper. It'll make next week's paper, which comes out on Wednesday. And that's not the 10-day notice before our Tuesday meeting, the 31st.
Well, we need to get clarification from Sam on that.
Give him a call, but I think we won't have time.
Well, we get the.
Post it, put it on the website, put it on a piece
That's what I was
of
gonna
paper
say.
on the door.
If we just post it, we don't get it in the paper, but we'll at least still have it posted. Yep.
You know, and the Fillmore
Versus-
County Journal Reporter will probably, indicate that we'll be dealing with that.
Okay.
Sam or Sue an email just seeing if we have to or.
Yeah, I can do that.
Well, I think they should be here, one of them on the 31st, because if we're gonna talk to DOT.
No, but that's for sure.
The question.
Talking about posting.
We gotta have a public hearing,
Posting, yeah.
I mean,
public meeting in the first place.
I mean, we had a public hearing on that ordinance, took a comment, made some changes to it to bring back for the 31st, so I thought we were covered, but
I thought so too.
we'll get clarification on that.
Okay.
Any closing public comment? So next week, we're going to set our elected officials.
The 31st.
31st, yep.
Next meeting.
And then we've already done the
Everyone else, well,
Okay,
the unions that.
except for the union ones, yep. All right,
Everyone else is covered.
okay.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
Under statute 13D03 subdivision to discuss labor negotiations, including negotiation strategies, developments, and discussion and review of labor negotiation proposals conducted pursuant to sections 179A01 and 179A25. Is there a second?
Second.
31st.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Okay, so we just need to.
So Allison Dewey made a motion to come out of closed session at 12:06 and Greg seconded it.
All right, the county board met in closed session to, I don't have the agenda here to say exactly what it was. Pursuant to Minnesota statute 13D.03 to discuss labor negotiations. There will be action taken regarding 2 unions.
Unmute the.
I did.
Okay, so
So LELS, or MAPE, I guess, was done first. We had, a series of negotiations. The last time the board met, they changed a couple of items that the MAPE had requested regarding teleworking and reopening the contract based on a memorandum of agreement. It was sent back to them and their membership ratified the tentative agreement, so our county board would be required to also ratify that tentative agreement.
is there a motion to adopt the ratified agreement for MAPE
So move.
for years 25, 26, 27? Motion been made, is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Right, LELS, non-licensed personnel, Local 60 of the Houston County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff's Department, no, Sheriff's Office, met last week with a mediation session and were able to come to agreement. The outstanding item was wages and there was.
And clothing.
And the clothing allowance. And there was agreement reached and their membership ratified. We were notified this morning that their membership ratified.
So now we as a board have to
Ratify the tentative agreement.
ratify the tentative agreement with LES 60.
Yep.
Is there a motion to that?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That concludes it, right?
That's it.
You have a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else to bring forward?
Wait. Oh, we have to do another ask about public comment, just in case.
Is there any other public comment?
I don't know if the phone call is gonna make a comment.
Before too, I want to wish everybody a
my
Merry
paper.
Christmas.
Oh,
Same way, everybody Merry Christmas.
Everybody have a good
No
Christmas.
public comment, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.